firstly going to introduce Pamela McCombe. Pamela is a neurologist, a clinician and a researcher.
What you've got up there are kind of the approaches that are used in MS, and you know, all my colleagues here will agree that it really is a very active field of research, MS research. And this is just to show you the kinds of fields of research that are happening around the world. On the next slide, I'll tell you about what's happening in Australia. Worldwide, the kind of things we do are genetics, and you're going to hear a bit more about that, because clearly genetics is important. You know, who you are, how you're born, what your genes are about, obviously does define who you are and what you might be predisposed to. Epidemiology, I'll talk more about, but is a major strength of Australia, but epidemiology around the world has been extremely important in showing that MS is more common in women than in men, and showing the natural history of disease, which will probably never be able to be done again because people will be treated. Down the bottom there I've got neuroimaging, because I'm going to say a bit more about that. The developments in being able to image the brain are just stunning recently. Now we have MRI scans that transformed everything, but beyond that we have very special kinds of MRI scans. We can see more than the white spots on the MRI scan. We can actually see cells with special PET scanning. We can look at metabolism. So imaging is going to be extremely powerful in studying the pathology of many diseases, including MS in the future, because the technology's caught up. And then on the bottom right-hand corner is pathology, which is obviously extremely important in leading us to try to understand what the disease is all about. So now in green and gold you have the Australian contributions. All right. So Australia is world renowned for the genetic studies. Australia's done excellent epidemiology study and has been very important in teasing out the links with vitamin D, which to our surprise turns out to be very important, and EBV, which epidemiologically turns out to be important. And down the bottom I've mentioned the longitudinal study, which some of the people in the audience may be associated with, which is a fairly straightforward study, just through the lifetime of patients, see what happens to them. But again, it's very important to see, you know, the effects of MS on patients. Over on the right-hand side is immunology, and here we're pretty keen on immunology and T cells, because even though there have been a few bids from other ideas about what might cause MS, you can't deny that the treatments that work are directed at the immune system, and for that matter, the genes that are important in MS are part of the immune system. So we're still pretty keen on immunology as being fundamental to the cause of MS in Australia. Down the bottom, I've just put clinical trials. Australia, again, has been very strong in clinical trials from the very early days of Professor Jim McLeod, who was a kind of a father, or probably now a grandfather, of MS research. And Australia, you know, participates strongly in the pivotal trials of all the new treatments. On the bottom right-hand side is pathology. And again, I've mentioned John Prinius because he really is an extremely important, well-renowned Australian pathologist who's contributed enormously to the understanding, particularly of how MS gets started, and that's where there is some debate about what the really first abnormality is. And I've mentioned down the bottom the MS Brain Bank, which is again gearing up, getting stronger, again likely to be a very important contribution from Australia, again funded by the MS Society. And right in the bottom, I haven't given it a green and gold box because we haven't done it yet, but I think that that neuroimaging, you know, it's a bit my kind of hobby horse at the moment, but I think that it will be extremely important if we can gather the resources to get really excellent neuroimaging, because you can look at the whole brain, you can look at it many times, you can look at month after month and really see what's happening if you have excellent neuroimaging. And finally, there's stem cell research, which is a bit different again, which is the hope either that administering stem cells might suppress the immune system, or better yet, that administering stem cells might in some way repair the nervous system. And Australia, again, has a a long track record from the original finding of the thing called colony stimulating factor, which is necessary to make stem cells grow. So that's my kind of quick thumbnail sketch of what's happening and where Australia fits in, and I think Australia does pretty well, really.